Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this episode of 30 Minutes to President's Club. My name is Amran Farouk, and I'm here with my co-host, Nick Skelski. And folks, today we have back on, by popular request, it is Anthony Firenzi. If you don't remember him, he's the head of sales over at Unified GTM. He was Lattice's #1 rep. 4.5 years in a row, he hit over 100% quota attainment, never missed. And in his most recent quarter, or in his first quarter leading the Unify Revenue Organization, he did 197% of his quota, which is absolutely bonkers as a head of sales. Nick, why should people listen?
So I think the biggest paradigm shift that you're going to learn from Anthony in this episode is there's a lot of salespeople out there who think your job is to ask questions of your prospect. What's your buying process look like? How long does procurement take? What would you like to see in the demo? And don't get me wrong, you do need to ask good questions, but Anthony's really, really good at not necessarily asking, but prescribing or recommending. And so if you want to learn how to guide or steer or shift the conversation in your favor, Anthony is very, very good at that. He gets into things like shifting your comms with your prospects onto Slack instead of on email. He talks about how you can demo to an exec versus to a champion. We also get into how you can navigate a negotiation. He's leading a team right now of 9 or 10 AEs and helping all of those people negotiate pretty hefty numbers every single month. And so if you want a structured, really, really great set of talk tracks that he uses, that comes towards the back half of this episode.
And 3, 2, 1, let's roll.
All right, Anthony, welcome back to the show. You may remember that we start every single episode with your top 3 actionable takeaways. So let's get yours.
First one is add your prospects to Slack. Don't have to ask them for permission, just like you would send an email, but this is going to create faster lines of communication. You can intro them into a customer or a reference directly, which is really cool. And sociologically and psychologically, multiple pings in Slack is acceptable, where if I sent you 3 emails in a day, you'd think I'm crazy. Hey, Sarah, I want to be respectful of your professional inbox. I find Slack is far less intrusive for our partners. I'm just going to add you there after this call.
Awesome. What's number 2?
Number 2 is being prescriptive at every step. Instead of asking for permission constantly or asking, hey, have you purchased software before? Who's going to sign off? Is that you? What feels right as far as pricing? Tell them. You've done thousands of these. They've purchased this software probably once, maybe twice max. You're the expert. A seller should know the risks in a deal better than their buyer does. Hey, Armand, to be honest, I've done hundreds of these, if not thousands. And if we don't get X person in the room, what happens is we do a ton of work together. We get to the 1 yard line. You're excited. I'm excited. My manager's excited. And it falls through on the 1 yard line. So what we need to do is we need to get that person involved or this won't happen.
All right, Anthony, I'll be honest. I've done hundreds of these episodes. And if you don't give us tip number 3, it's going to be kind of awkward. So what's number 3?
Want to do a reverse demo. So a lot of times what I'll do for that second demo when they've already seen the platform or even earlier, I'll say, hey, Nick, can you open up your computer for me and share and show me exactly how you do that? That way I can learn exactly what their process is. I can know, is it easy? They'll probably feel the anxiety of this is a little janky and I need a better solution. For an example, at my company, I'll say, hey, show me how you go prospect and find a bunch of people at an account, craft an email, and actually send it to them. They open up Sales Nav, they click around a bunch, they link it back to Salesforce, they open up their outreach extension, they type a custom email, then they send and hope that it lands in their inbox, where my company, we do all of that autonomously for them.
So, Anthony, you gave us an example around prescribing to your prospect why it's important to multi-thread or get more people involved. You also in the prep talked about how this doesn't just happen when you're trying to get to power. This literally happens on the first discovery call. So could you give an example of one of the first times that you'll be prescribing a prospect on how to buy your software the right way?
We'll tie it into the reverse demo. I'll say, hey, you know what? Everyone uses tools a little bit differently. I have a lot of experience with X tool, but show me how you use it.
You also gave an example in the prep around the intro call where you'll be like, hey, what made you reach out to us? You requested the demo on our site. And they were like, oh yeah, we're just browsing. We're just looking around. And you almost prescribe to them the problems that you think they have or the things you think they should be thinking about. Could you talk about how the talk track goes from there on that very first interaction?
Yeah, I think about it walking into a store. If I walk into a store and say I'm just browsing, it means I'm not buying. If I was a seller or I was working in that store, I would say, hey, Nick, normally when people walk in here, it's because they're looking for like fresher clothes or they're looking something maybe they're not used to. Actually, sometimes they're here to buy something for a second or third time. Is that the case? Now I can open them up. They're going to put their guard down. They're going to tell me. In software, it's the same thing. When customers come to us, when prospects come to us, it's usually for these three reasons. Do you fit in one of those buckets right now? If not, tell me why not.
Could you fill in what those three reasons sound like for either Unify or when you were at Lattice, like what you would say, like from a talk track perspective?
It could be something as simple as like, hey, you know what? Our execs are interested in AI and they told us to book a demo. That's way too nebulous. They're never going to sign a contract with us. So I need to prescribe to them why AI is important in prospecting in top of funnel. It's bringing a bunch of tools together, enabling your humans so they can do better work. Maybe it is doing some type of scale or more pointed work as well. So for us, we're going to capture intent signals and reach out to the right people at the right time instead of like 2018 when I was at BDR and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to email all 1,000 of these companies and I'm going to book 5 meetings.
Anthony, what do you do when you get onto a call and you sense that someone is asking about problems or bringing problems to the table that never lead to a sale? So for example, when I was at Pave, we had a compensation planning tool and then like a visual offer letter, and you had to buy them together. So if someone came in to like look at the visual offer letter, we were like, oh crap, like this is going to be like a 2K deal if I can't get them over to the compensation stuff. How do you do that without just like being like, hey, like I know that's the problem you came to solve, but go look at this stuff instead? How do you like artfully navigate that?
Yeah, I think this is where asking a question then being prescriptive is important. At Lattice, people would want to come in and purchase engagement surveys all the time. That was not our bread and butter. Our bread and butter was combining performance management analytics with your engagement analytics. So I would always let them know, like, hey, do you know how your top performers are feeling in your engagement surveys? Answer would always be no. There's no way for them to do that. Let me show you something really cool and why Lattice is different, and it would be worth your investment. I would then layer in the performance data. We'd call it a wow moment. Once they see that, they understand that they should at least make it an evaluation.
So what you're doing is someone came for engagement surveys, and then you found the linkage between engagement surveys and your performance review product. And you just asked a problem question about that, which was like, how do you know how your top performers feel in your engagement surveys? And that's what creates the bridge between a product that always sells and a product that doesn't sell. Is that right?
What I want to do is you came in for a reason. I want to pull on that string. I'm not saying, ooh, you should look at performance reviews. I'm saying, you know what? You came here for engagement surveys. Super important. You want to know how to make engagement surveys even more impactful?
You're at Unify. I want to give you another example here. And Unify, to my knowledge, has like a million different workflows that you can work through, right? It's like all these different types of things. And when I'm on a discovery call, I'm usually like, okay, I've got to get like 2 or 3 big problems before I go into a demo. And if I only have one, it better be like a really fat problem. Otherwise, like that's not going to be enough to hold up in a demo and ultimately in a proposal. I'm curious for you, how do you know when it's time to transition from discovery and finding use cases for them into pitching? Are you like mapping out a couple of potential workflows and use cases? Like, how do you actually play that out in a discovery call?
I think it's different for everyone. So every call, your prospect will let you know if they're done with the questions. You can see it on their face. They'll start disengaging, and I want to go into the platform immediately once I see that. But for some people who have a million problems, I go, oh God, we're actually going to have too many things. I don't know what they care about the most. Either pause and have them stack rate, which is very traditional sales methodology, or I actually pull up the demos sooner. Armand, that point was actually really, really important. This is how we're doing it. There's a bunch of different ways we can go from here. What do you care about the most? That way, they are navigating through the platform with me and they are opting into this journey together rather than me just saying, paying product value. We're changing it up a little bit and we're doing it together.
How much product are you actually showing in your first 30-minute call with a customer?
A disrespectful amount. One of our leaders on the CS team was making a joke about how little our prospects were seeing the platform before they were actually signing on. Being able to speak to it really eloquently and succinctly is far more important than being able to go in and tell them about every single nut and bolt within the platform.
That's actually something we've even been working on in selling our sponsorships at 30 Minutes to President's Club, where like sometimes a customer will ask us about like, okay, like, could you give us some examples of like, what ROI tracking looks like? And there's a right way and a wrong way to address that question. The wrong way is to pull up 12 different ROI case studies and go through every single line item of our customer QBRs. The right way is to say, well, look, every customer tracks us a little bit differently. Some people look at direct source pipeline, others look at influenced pipeline. I've got some case studies I could take you through. I guess I'm curious, like, how are you measuring the success of your sponsorship engagements? And when you keep it high enough level and show like there's some depth there, you can go deeper if you want, but I don't need to pull up a visual aid. It keeps the conversation, I think, at the right altitude so that you can keep exploring multiple use cases and like the vision as opposed to getting trapped in the depths or the weeds.
I think first and foremost, like humans in general just deeply want to be understood. No one wants to be like, I don't want anyone to understand my pain or what I'm going through or who I am as an individual.
Yeah.
So that's where listening is very important. But you have to be able to tell them, I get what you are saying. This happens with other people. You are not alone. Here's how we can potentially make it better.
I want to talk about the wrap of your first call with a customer. Those last like 5 to 6 minutes where you're setting next steps. There's a couple different things. One, you talked about like getting on Slack comms with them, and I'm curious if you can share a little bit more about that. Two, you mentioned some stuff up front around like how prescriptive you are with like, this is where we should go next versus asking them where should we go next. And then you also had something in the pre-show we were talking about like your video follow-up versus like a text-based follow-up. And I'm wondering if you can speak to like how you do follow-ups differently than other salespeople.
I want to get people on Slack because truly, I can probably send you 2 or 3 short Slacks and it is okay. We do that all day in our own work. If someone is using Slack, they're giving me a green light to say, hey, send me a few messages. It could be short thoughts, it could be longer, but people want to be able to get information not only quickly, but like in a digestible manner. Where I see sales reps do follow-up wrong is they want to align something about their company with everything that the prospect said. They spend hours and hours and hours on follow-up, when in reality, it should be salutation, what we heard, what you want, what we are going to do about it, next step. And that's probably already too long. If I had more time, I would have written less.
Anthony, this is not just something that needs to happen in a recap. A lot of times when you try to pitch each feature, each workflow, people lose sight of the broader vision and the biggest problem they're trying to solve. When you're like trying to like put it all together and like, this is one big vision for like everything Lattice can do for you based on what you've told me, or this is everything Unify can do for you independent of like these 2 workflows that you talked about. I'm curious, like, how are you doing that without listing out all of the different things? And even if you have like an example of what you would say, that would be helpful.
I'll use Unify as an easier example in this instance, just because it's at the front of my mind. We do have a lot of tools. There's many things that could happen. In reality, it's a simple workflow. We go and find the right people for you. We find them at the right time because of our intent signals. We are then going to send them the right messaging, and it's going to land in their inbox because we manage deliverability. A lot of people are interested right now. If I were to walk through the 3 tools that do all 3 of those things, you're going to lose me. It's going to be really confusing. But more importantly, Armand and Nick, no offense, you probably don't have power. Someone else probably does. You're not going to be able to relay that information.
So when you get the sense that a champion who might be at or slightly below the line is like, we'll call him a RevOps goon. We love our RevOps goons around here. And they're like super, you can do this workflow. And that's how they talk, And they're obsessed with the technical details. And the CRO of the company hasn't used a computer since Microsoft Excel was launched in 1997. How do you bridge that communication gap, or how do you teach your champion to like speak the language of an executive so that like they can speak to that same vision?
My follow-up will be something that they can forward. I want them to be able to pass it along. It's not just directly to Armand. I want to send an email follow-up where it's extremely shareable, digestible, and something that anyone can read and understand. One of my sales mentors, Justin King, he taught me be able to demo your product like you're teaching it to your mother. One layer beyond that, be able to demo your product without the demo even being on your computer. Can you sell me your product without showing me your product? That's how good you need to be, how much you need to know your product and your value props to actually be proficient and be a top 1% seller.
Could you talk about what an executive demo would look like versus what a champion or deep dive demo might look like?
Executive demos, very little salutations. I'm doing for sure a bunch of research about what they care about. Takes 2 seconds to go figure out like what a company is probably going through at any given time between headcount, funding rounds. Are they losing employees? Did they launch a new product? Show the executive you care about the business, not about the person. That's usually the way I like to frame it because that's their job. Take care of the business. From there, I'm going through the demo. In an executive demo, they care about growing the business. Maybe they're raising a round. Hey, to go get a Series B, we know that they want you to see that you have 40% more pipeline than you did last quarter. How are you going to do that with the team you have today in the same motion? You need some type of uplift. Unify can do that for you. For a champion demo, they're going to be the ones living in the weeds. Hey, you need something that's actually better day to day where you can go and it's easier to use so you can impress your executive. That's Unify. It's usually top down or bottom up.
So Anthony, I'm thinking about like the topic that we started this interview with, which was the concept of like prescribing the customer, like the direction you think they need to go, as opposed to being like, what do you want to see? What do you want to do next? And I'm thinking about it in the context of negotiation, where you're never going to be like, what do you want to pay? I'll make it work. Because like oftentimes what the customer wants to pay and what we can do, those just don't align with reality. And so I'm wondering if you can talk to me, like when you get to the back half of the sale, when it's like, there's clearly fit here, like you're clearly solving meaty enough problems for them, and they start trying to pull on your price or pull on your commercial terms or get more for less. What's your approach to navigating a negotiation?
Typically that I have no power. And I've been lucky enough that at every level, it's been somewhat true. Sales reps will have like discount matrix, or they know what they can get from their manager or their VP or even their CFO. I'm letting the buyer know I have no power. I'm on your team. Really, my framework, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go in there and I'm trying to let them know I understand. They want X and I understand Y. This is why you will not get that. This is how we will get something.
So if I'm the buyer and I'm like, look, I'm just going to make up numbers here. And I'm like, Anthony, you're priced at $1,500 a month. And I'll be honest, like we just can't swing that kind of budget. That's insane. You know, I need you to get me your best price. How do you respond in those scenarios?
I love that. I can't afford $1,500 a month to buy this software either. So I'm with you. There's a reason it's structured this way. I know exactly how to get our best price. To get our best price, though, I need a few things. We have to be vendor of choice. My CFO cares the most about time of sign. Could we sign up in the next week? And buying more product. If you were going to purchase a larger package, I know you were in between package A and package B. If you purchase package B, you're going to see a larger percentage taken off the top rather than package A.
So buyer goes, well, so what would that actually look like? I know we were thinking about package A and it was $1,500. Package B's $2,200. Like, are you saying you can get that even below $1,000?
I've seen X done before, but I'll be honest, I can't go get any information until you give me that info and I go to my CFO. He's the big bad wolf. She's the big bad wolf. I have no power here. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on my 30 minutes to President's Club hat and I'm going to work for you all here. I just need a little bit of information.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for us is like, I was hoping to get this thing around $1,000 a month. And yeah, we probably could sign. I don't know this week because it's Thursday and I'm out tomorrow. But, you know, obviously we'd have to look at the contract and make sure that like everything in that is straightforward. But like if there's no major red lines or changes my legal procurement team needs to make, I think we could probably do it not next week, maybe midweek the week after. I don't know if that's going to change things with your CFO though.
Yeah, it probably will. To be honest, nobody pays that price for this software. So we definitely would have to find something else. Why don't we sit down, figure out what's realistic from your team? What I can do is I can go to bat for you and I can come back with options.
Where do you try to take things from here? Are you going to try to keep pulling out from me like exactly where I need to land, or do you go in a different direction?
I want to get to a no. And what's funny is everyone says they want to get to a no, but from the prospect's end, I actually want to get to a point where I say no, where I feel comfortable saying won't happen.
Yeah.
Now we have a floor. Now the prospect understands, hey, okay, I went too far. This is the realm we need to live in. Here's our swimming lanes. Now that we have those swimming lanes, we at least can progress the conversation or be professional or get this going somewhere. Negotiation goes nowhere when you say, give me your best price. And you say, let me go figure out what that is for you.
One of the things that you talked about was you positioned your CFO. She really cares about like the date by which this is signed, signature date. How much do you care about that signature date being, I think the example you gave was like this week. How much do you care about the signature date being this week or this month versus knowing exactly when that signature date is and getting a commitment for that?
If we can solidify a signature date, I know my CFO, she's really, really tough. If I walk in there and say you can sign up on April 19th, you're going to see a much larger price adjustment. If I go in there and say they can sign up this month, she'll probably give us like a 5 to 10% adjustment.
So you say the sooner you sign, the bigger cut you get. Interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, because normally what I do is I care the most about the predictability. I basically try to figure out what's a normal timeline for you. If we're at April 17th today, your procurement process takes 6 weeks. I'm like, all right, can we get that down to 4? I need you to sign by this date right here. I need you to sign whatever by May 17th. But what I'm hearing from you is you almost have a sliding scale of, hey, if you can do it in 4 weeks, you get a 10% discount. But if you can do it in 2 weeks, you'll get a 15% discount.
I should have done this in discovery and figured out what their buying process was. So I already know. I already know everything. And I know that they have no procurement, no legal. It's going to be make sure there's not a crazy line item in the contract and they're going to sign.
Yeah.
If that was the reality, I probably would tie it to like this week. Like, can you sign tomorrow on Friday if I go get you something? If I know they have a longer procurement process, I'm never going to make it the last day of the month because that's going to slip into May for sure.
Totally.
But I'll make it April 27th, April 26th.
Well, to that point, even around the holidays, like I'll never forget this one year when I was an AE selling this ERP software, and we were giving year-end commercial incentives for people to sign before the end of the year. I had a great big fat pipeline because I worked really hard that year with my prospecting, and I told all of my deals that were like in Q4, Q1 close, I was like, hey, if you sign by 12/31, you've got this discount available to you. I regretted that so much, not offering that discount by making it 12/31. Because the last day of the year, I kid you not, I was selling to law firms. I was on the phone with 3 different managing partners of these law firms negotiating red lines. There was a managing partner, he was literally at a holiday party and he's like on his phone looking at the Google Doc with the red lines, and it was so freaking stressful. And if I had just like said, hey, 12:30 instead of 12:31, I would have given myself so much more slack because people push to the deadline. And what I do now is end of year, I'm like, look, I don't want to be doing this over the holidays. I know you don't either. Like, our cutoff is 12/20. And then if we do have a push, like, we can renegotiate from there. So I really love the set the deadline not as the last day of the month.
And you can do it both ways too. I could be, hey, Nick, you know what? We're in a fortunate space where a ton of people sign up at the end of the month. My CFO, she's a little more reserved to give out pricing adjustments because she's signing so many documents at the end of the month. You can sign up sooner, much more likely that you get a pricing adjustment. The inverse, hey, Nick, we've had a pretty good month. The end of the month rolls around. My CFO's pen is on fire. They want to sign every single agreement, get it done, get it done, get it done. Mm-hmm. So then if you are later in the month, you know that they'll still get a good deal.
Anthony, my guess is there are deals where you know your vendor of choice, they are dying to buy you. And every once in a while, you might get someone who isn't negotiating you at all or very hard. And this would happen with my top performer, Morgan Mello. She'd get these deals where she'd have them in forecast as commit, but she'd be like, hey, I'm just going to give you a heads up. There's no discount on this deal. Like, they're committing on this date and I know they're going to close, but I don't want to throw in a discount on this date to lock it in. So if you decide not to discount on a deal, are there other ways you can lock in timeline to make sure that they actually sign on time, even when you know they're going to sign eventually?
The pre-scheduled implementation call. What is it? It's April 17th. I know your CFO is Nick, and Nick is going to sign. We are good to go. We have a project and a timeline. I want to make sure you are up and running and get to success as fast as possible. CSM Danny is the absolute best. I want to schedule with that person. They have a call on April 21st open. Can you do that time? Yes, lock it in. Now, when you're talking to legal and your CFO, you say, hey, actually, we need this done on the 19th because the weekend's going to roll around and we have a kickoff call on the 21st.
We've been using that one here at 30 Minutes to President's Club also. And I really, really like it because it's less about like sometimes customers are like, discount for timeline, whatever. I'm sure if I miss it by a day, we'll be fine. But like there's something about the kickoff call is literally related to their project to solve this problem. And you are driving timeline based on something that is like truly in your champion's best interest. They're not going to feel that pricing discount because it's not their money, but they are going to feel if the project doesn't kick off when they wanted it to. And I kid you not, like we had a customer, gosh, this was probably 6 months ago, where we pre-scheduled the kickoff call, and at the 11th hour, there was like a red line change, and they missed their signature date. And they were still like, let's get on. We're going to have it signed before the kickoff call. And I'm like, all right, cool. We get on. It's like 20 minutes before the kickoff call. I'm like, we haven't gotten it. And they're like, well, we'll get it signed on the call. And I get on the call, and I'm like, folks, like, we literally can't kick this thing off. It was literally me and my CSM, and they're pinging their legal team on Slack, and we got the contract signed 15 minutes into the kickoff call. We did not start the kickoff call until 15 minutes in, but you better believe like I could see it driving timeline with this customer. I love using that one. Anthony, we've talked about a bunch of awesome things in this episode, but the clock is ticking just like the timeline for me to close my deals. We got to ask you about one last question, which we've talked about a bunch of good habits salespeople should be exhibiting. Now I got to ask you about a bad habit. So the last question is, what is one bad habit that you see a bunch of salespeople exhibiting that you think they need to break because it hurts them more than it helps?
Overthinking and creating latency. You should have a process. You know what works. You're the expert at your company. You should be sending the right information as succinct as possible.
Love it. Thank you for joining us. Everybody stick around for a succinct 60-second recap coming up soon.
Alrighty, Nick, it's time for a 2x2 recap from this episode with Anthony Firenzi. What do you have for your 2?
So number 1 is when your buyer asks you for a discount, you've got to let them know that you are not the person who makes these final calls. You need to have somebody else have power in the negotiation. In this example, Anthony says, hey, I don't make those calls. I have to go make a case to my CFO. And here's what my CFO cares about. Let's talk about what you might be able to do so I can go make that case to her. Number 2 is when you are actually offering that discount, he recommends using a sliding scale where they get a steeper discount if they sign sooner. So they might get a 10% discount if they sign by April 15th. They might get a 15% discount if they sign by April 1st. And so give them incentives to sign sooner rather than later.
Number 3, steer the demo and the discovery in the directions of the problems and solutions that can actually drive a signature. So if someone's like asking about like niche workflows, don't be afraid to recommend the most common workflows that you know actually move the needle for a sales team. And then lastly, number 4, if you don't have to discount, you can still drive timeline by pre-scheduling the implementation call, and that's a light lock-in on a deal that saves you probably 10% on your ACV. Alrighty, Nick, how can people help us out here?
Well, you know, Armand, I was against it for the longest time, but if you didn't know, we have a 30 Minutes to President's Club TikTok. So if you want to consume bite-sized, actionable tactics, they're from me and Armand and from all of our wonderful 30 MPC guests. Go check us out on TikTok. You will get stuck in an endless scroll. You might even see Armand doing some unique dances. Just kidding. He's not actually doing that. He is giving good sales tips. Check it out, and we'll see you next week on the show.